For generations, every textbook claimed humans arrived in the Americas just 13,000 years ago. But a dangerous cave high in the Mexican mountains holds stone tools nearly 30,000 years old, confirmed by tests across 3 labs. This single discovery doesn't just shift the timeline, it shatters it, forcing archaeologists to admit we've built our history on the wrong foundation. How could such hard evidence stay hidden so long, and who left it behind? The approach to Chiquihuite Cave is nothing short of punishing. Perched nearly 2,740 meters above sea level in the Astillero Mountains, the site sits a full kilometer above the nearest valley floor. The road winds through territory where armed escorts are not a precaution, but a requirement. Even at dawn, the air is thin and cold, and the mountain slopes are steep enough to turn a misstep into a fatal plunge. Few had ever dared to search here, and fewer still returned with anything to show for it. Dr. Cyprian Ardelin and his team spent weeks hauling gear and supplies up the mountainside, navigating not just the terrain but the threat of violence that shadows much of rural Zacatecas. Inside the cave, the darkness swallows sound and sense of time. The chambers run deep, twisting away from the entrance until daylight is nothing but a memory. It was here, beneath layers of untouched sediment, that the team uncovered something no one expected, an enormous cache of stone artifacts. Over the course of the excavation, nearly 1,900 pieces were recovered, blades, flakes, points, and fragments, each shaped by hands long vanished. The sheer quantity was staggering for a site so remote and inhospitable. Most of the tools were fashioned from greenish or blackish limestone, a raw material not found in the cave walls themselves. Someone had carried these stones up the mountain, choosing them over easier options, and worked them with a skill that left no doubt about intent. The tools themselves are small, sharp, and varied. Some look like blades for cutting, others like scrapers or points that could be hafted onto wooden shafts. Many show patterns of flaking and shaping that speak to a practiced tradition, not random chance. The sediment layers holding them are distinct and undisturbed, each artifact resting where it was left, sealed away by time and geology. For Ardelian, the cave was never just a site, it was a riddle. One that demanded months of labor in freezing darkness, surrounded by the weight of what might be the oldest human traces in the Americas. Every artifact pulled from the earth brought new questions. Who braved this mountain? Why come here again and again to leave behind so much? And how had these signs of life remained hidden for so long, in a place that seemed designed to keep its secrets forever? Stone tools alone cannot rewrite history. Their story depends on proof that withstands every challenge, every doubt. At Chiquihuite Cave, that proof came from the laboratory, not just the field. Each artifact was scrutinized for signs of human intent. Many showed prepared striking platforms, the flat surfaces where a skilled hand would have aimed a blow, and bulbs of percussion, subtle curves that ripple out from a single, deliberate strike. Under high-powered microscopes, the edges of dozens of blades and flakes revealed microscopic scars and polish, patterns only repeated cutting, scraping, or carving could produce. These were not the random fractures of falling rock, but the true test was time itself. To anchor these discoveries in deep history, the team sent samples to multiple independent labs, bones, charcoal, and sediment from the same layers as the tools. Radiocarbon dating was applied to 46 separate samples. Optically stimulated luminescence, or OSL, was used on 6 more, measuring when grains of sediment last saw sunlight. The results were modeled together using Bayesian statistics, cross-checking every outlier, every possible error. The oldest tool-bearing layers fell between 25,000 and 33,000 years ago. This range was not a single result, but a pattern repeated across different labs, materials, and dating methods. Eska Willerslev, a geneticist known for his caution, oversaw much of this process. He insisted on independent replication and tight protocols, knowing that a single misstep could unravel the entire claim. The dates held. The stratigraphy was intact. The tools rested in undisturbed sediment far below any known Clovis levels. For archaeologists, this created a crisis of confidence. The evidence was no longer just a curiosity from a remote Mexican cave. It was a direct challenge to everything the timeline had once allowed. If these tools are as old as the dates say, then the story of the first Americans is not just longer, it is almost unrecognizable. At the height of the last ice age, the interior of North America was a frozen barricade. 2 massive ice sheets, The Laurentide and Cordilleran merged into a wall of ice stretching from the Atlantic to the Pacific. The so-called ice-free corridor, once thought to be the gateway for the first Americans, was not just closed, it was lifeless. Geological records show that before about 13,000 years ago, this corridor was a wasteland, bare rock, meltwater, and wind. No plants, no animals, nothing for people to hunt or gather. For thousands of years before the corridor opened, the heart of the continent was simply impassable. Yet the Pacific coast told a different story. As glaciers locked up water, sea levels dropped by as much as 120 meters, exposing a vast fringe of land now hidden beneath the waves. Along this ancient shoreline, kelp forests flourished, creating a kelp highway rich with edible seaweed, fish, shellfish, and marine mammals. Paleoecological studies confirm that these productive marine ecosystems stretched from the Bering Sea down past Alaska, along British Columbia, and all the way to Baja California and the Mexican coast. Even during the coldest millennia, these coasts remained ice-free and alive. The land route was closed, but the sea offered a corridor of abundance. Early humans skilled at exploiting coastal resources could have traveled south along these exposed shelves, moving from cove to cove, island to island. The archaeological record on land is silent for this period, but that silence is expected. Most ancient campsites now lie underwater, far beyond the reach of conventional excavation. What remains above sea level are rare highland refuges, places like Chiquihuite Cave, where the evidence of early migration survived the rising seas. Mexico's interior, especially its highland caves and valleys, offered another kind of sanctuary. While the north was buried in ice, central and northern Mexico remained open, with pockets of grassland, woodland, and freshwater springs. Fossil and genetic evidence points to abundant megafauna, such as camels, horses, and giant ground sloths, roaming these regions. For small groups of hunter-gatherers, the interior of Mexico was not a dead end, but a destination. The cave in Zacatecas is not an outlier, it is a waypoint along a southern route that bypassed the ice, following corridors of life through the heart of the continent. When the old model insisted that migration was impossible until the corridor thawed, it missed the simple truth. The coast and the Mexican interior were open for thousands of years before the ice ever parted. The scientific world did not accept the cave story without a fight. As news of stone tools dating to 30,000 years ago spread, skepticism sharpened. In conference halls and peer reviews, archaeologists demanded more than stratified layers and flaked limestone. The first volley came from those who saw geofacts, naturally broken rocks, where Ardelean's team saw human hands at work. Some experts pointed out that limestone, especially in caves, can fracture in ways that mimic deliberate napping. Without human bones or DNA, they argued, the case for people in Mexico so early was circumstantial at best. Debate over the artifact's origins grew heated. Critics insisted that, in the absence of direct human evidence, extraordinary claims required extraordinary proof. They called for blind tests, for experimental napping on the same kind of limestone, for independent analysts to distinguish tool from talus. Ardelean's defenders countered with patterns, the sheer number of pieces, the repeated presence of striking platforms, the microscopic scars from cutting and scraping. More than 90% of the tools came from greenish or blackish stone not found in the cave walls, suggesting selection and transport rather than random collapse. But the absence of ancient human DNA from the sediments left a gap that could not be closed with stone alone. Meanwhile, geneticists complicated the picture. Modern DNA studies indicate that most Native Americans descend from a population that split from East Asians around 23,000 years ago, thousands of years after the oldest Chiquihuite dates. Some researchers propose that earlier groups may have entered the Americas in multiple waves, leaving behind little or no genetic trace in living people. If true, the cave's evidence might reflect a lost lineage, a migration pulse that vanished before the Clovis horizon ever dawned. As the controversy deepened, the impact spread. Archaeologists began to revisit other ancient sites, Brazilian rock shelters, submerged coastal caves, places once dismissed as too old or ambiguous. The timeline of human arrival in the Americas, once a straight line anchored at 13,000 years ago, now looked more like a tangled web. The old model was not just incomplete, it was built on a foundation that could no longer hold. Textbooks would have to change. The story of the first Americans was no longer a single path, but a series of journeys, some successful, others lost to time, all written in traces that defied easy answers. Today, every new excavation in the Americas carries a simple warning: the past still holds secrets deeper than any textbook admits. As evidence grows, the story of our origins keeps shifting beneath our feet. History isn't settled, it's waiting to be rewritten. What do you think we'll find next?